And so we are now proceeding with 15, right? So number 15 is Rabt Baina Diyana wa Tarikh. The summary of the Sharia connection between religion and history. So the substance, it says here, substance of this fiqh lies in the renewed study of life and progress of mankind through the Quran and Sunnah in the field of the supreme certainties. It does not lie in the materialistic theories and their usage to interpret events, historical periods, and pure intellectual trends or rationalism. There are four different categories. So this is the four divisions of the human history, basically, in FIqh tahawulat, which is of course wider in its scope compared to the materialist secular view of history. So the link of returning the link between history and religion, right? If you look in the past, our ulama, right, when they write about history, like the link, when they write about history, is not just from the perspective of events on its own, but we rely on nusus, we rely on hadith, Quranic verses, right, as sources of historical sources. Right? It's not just based on transmission or narrations, right? So if you look at the Quran itself is replete with historical narratives, right, about events of past nations, right, or whatever occurred to them, whatever transpired between their prophets and their ummah, all the way back to Nabi Adam alayhi salam. And if fiqh tahawulat attempts to revive this, attempts to attempt to Islamize, basically, historical reading after it has been secularized, after it has been colonized, after it has been westernized, right? So fiqh tahawulat attempts to Islamize it, not just Islamization that is superficial, but Islamization that is rooted in from the very foundation, from the very basis of what is our source of history, right? What is our source? Basically, the Quran and the Sunnah. What is the truth? Because history is, the purpose of history is what does it aim to do? Right? It aims to convey the truth to the generations that came after, right? The purpose of history is to convey the truth of what happened to the future generations. The past, right, preserve the information and they convey it to the future generations. And so the idea of what is the truth, right, even now it's being questioned, right? There's no such thing as absolute truth in this postmodern era lah. They question the idea, the concept of truth itself. But we as Muslims, we know, right, in our aqidah, for example, you read like those aqidah of Nasafiyah, for example, what does it say? Haqa'iqul ashya' thabitatun wa ilmu biha, the realities of things are established, right? And the ilmu, the knowledge of it, is possible, right? So basically, there is out there the truth, and we have to convey it to the future generations, and that is what history is about. So the best source of the truth, or the truth that is unquestionable, right, is the Quran itself, right? The Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? It is the source of our history, and therefore we need to return to it in order to read history, right, and link it with our deen. Because as he say here, it does not lie in the materialistic theories, their usage to interpret events, historical periods, and pure intellectual terms. Because you see, people have biases. their cultural bias, political bias, religious bias, they have gender bias, they have economic bias, nationalistic bias. So all of these biases tend to color their view of history or color their interpretation or the information they choose to emphasize and what they choose to downplay, right? Sometimes some things you emphasize. You are, for example, you talk about the history of a nation. You want to educate the younger generation to have patriotism, right? What kind of history would you narrate, right? What stories will you tell? What stories will you hide, right? To impress upon the younger generation a particular, value. So far, am I? Is my voice clear? Because I'm sitting in the last room in the house, so it might be not. Connection is not that strong.
Clear, clear.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. So I was saying, um, when human beings narrate or write history, there are biases, right? There are biases, and whoever is in power, they are the ones who have the overall, say, the final say, and their view will dominate, right? Will dominate in society. So for us Muslims, we need to look at our historical sources back, right? And not just confine ourselves to the secular view of history. Right? So our ulama, even in the Nusantara, right? In Nusantara, we have ulama who have written about human history. Not just Alamatul Sa'alah. We have Sheikh Nuruddin Ar-Raniri. Sheikh Nuruddin Ar-Raniri, he wrote a book, Bustanus Salatin. Bustanus Salatin, which is a book of human history or universal history. And all the way from the time of Nabi Adam until the spread of Islam in Aceh, and the time of the Sultan. The Sultan, which at his time there was a Sultan, I forgot, if I'm not wrong, Sultan Iskandar Muda. I'm not sure which Sultan was it lah. So basically, I think it was at the request of the Sultan, he wrote that book lah, Bustanus Salatin. So that book is an example of a history written from the perspective of a religious perspective. So it is not exactly a book of Alamatul Sa'ah, because it stops there at his, and then it jumps to, I think, matters of the akhirat. So his sources are mostly, of course, the Quran, Sunnah, and the writings of the ulama, right? And yeah, it is an example of a historical account that is from the Muslim point of view, written in quite recent times, maybe about 400 centuries, 300 centuries ago. So then we have other ulama in our Nusantara who also wrote about fiqh tahawulat. We have maybe not really fiqh tahawulat in the way that we are learning it today, but more like the kind where you list the alamat sa'ah, all the signs of the hour, with maybe some commentaries, the usual kind of style, the typical style, like Sheikh Ismail Daud Al-Fattani, Muhammad bin Ismail Al-Fattani. What his book is Al-Firqadain wal Jawahir Al-Iqdain. And then we have Sheikh Muhammad Arshad Al-Banjari also have Qawl Al-Mukhtasar. The one is Fi Alamatil Mahdi Al-Muntazar. So then the one that I was mentioning basically is Sheikh Nuruddin's one, is the one that is more on history. Yeah, so our history it covers these four aspects, right? Or four main broad stages. The Sawabik, right? Of course, the materialist secular view does not even consider this as something, possible to happen or to know. Right? This is beyond. This is metaphysics lah, basically. Beyond physics, this is metaphysics, right? The study of the past, sawabik wal azal, right? Before the creation of, right, and during the period of the creation of mankind, what Allah SWT has written in his Lauh Mahfuz, right, prior to the existence of mankind. And that is also part of our history because it is what God has ordained for us, right? The mithaq, right? The mithaq, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ بَنِي آدَمَ. And in Surah Araf, there's a verse about Allah SWT taking, إِذْ أَخْرَجَ اللَّهُ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّةً وَأَخَذَ عَلَيْهِمْ. There's a verse about the taking of the oath. Allah SWT take the oath from the progeny of Adam alayhi salam, right? And make them testify to his lordship. So that is a period that is not what you call some prior to the creation, right? Prior to the creation of mankind. And then the signs of Ajal and Amal pertain to the life of the earth, right? And its obligations and trials and the variables. Trials and the variables is the mutaghayyirat lah. Whatever phenomena, all the changes that happen in this world. The science of Amal. Right? The science of Amal is Alam Barzakh and Yawmul Qiyamah. Right? Studying in the presence of Allah SWT for reckoning. Science of Abad, the study of life after death and eternal existence either in the garden or hellfire, along with their pleasures, that is the garden or the torment of the hellfire. So this is what we should be emphasizing to ourselves and our kids and the future generation about Islamic view of history, the whole narrative, and how it's linked with the qada and qadar. Basically, it's a link between theology and history, right? Theology and history. So it is all interconnected, right? From the time of Adam alayhi salam, right? There's a hadith, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَمَا سُنِعَتْ فِتْنَةٌ مُنْذُ كَانَتِ الدُّنْيَا صَغِيرَةً وَلَا كَبِيرَةً إِلَّا لِفِتْنَةِ الدَّجَّالِ. There is not a fitnah since the dawn of the world or creation, whether it's big fitnah or small fitnah, except that it is like something that is a precursor or something that sets the stage for Dajjal, right? It sets the stage for him, right? And then there are other narrations about whoever has in his heart something, like some kind of support or like for the murder of Sayyidina Usman, right? He will believe in Dajjal if he sees him, or he will be if he's in the grave, he will believe in Dajjal, like something along that line. So, and then you see, like, there is some connection, right? There is a link. All these are interconnected. The fitnas are all interconnected, right? So yeah, this is why we will look at fiqh tahawulat not just as a sign of the hour, but also as the history of humankind as part of this subject, right? So this is what we need to do when we talk about history. The term history, the term tarikh, right? This thing with terminologies, right? We need to return back to our Islamic worldview when it comes to all these terms, right? Because the terms tend to lose or people tend to corrupt terms, change terms, in order to propagate particular idea or propagate certain practices. People change the name of alcohol, to promote it as something that is not as something that is not severely reprehensible, sinful. They change the name of zina. They change the name of riba, right? Bunga, they call it, duit bunga. So if you look at it, Bunga is something beautiful. Who has caused this corruption in the terms? Right? Who is the hidden hands behind this? The corruption of terms, changing it in order to make it seem less reprehensible, right? And then even to the extent that, argumentation in tanazu, fighting, argumentation, dispute in matters of religion is given the term is called something like, helping the religion, nasrul lid. So people tend to give themselves excuses, right? Or they change terms, right, in order to promote particular actions. So we look at the history all the way since the time of Nabi Adam alayhi salam, and we see that there are two madrasahs, right? There is a madrasah of Abawiyah, right, which is the link of chains of transmission of prophetic knowledge all the way to Nabi Adam alayhi salam. And then there is this madrasah Anawiyah, Shaitaniyah, Wad'iyah, which is the materialist, satanic, egoistic, rationalist kind of approach towards history, right? Which serves to eliminate God, remove God from the equation, right? So how did this happen? Right? From the beginning of history, his war, there's a war. He declared war. Right? He said, "I will, I will just stand, or I will just hide and lay in siege, waiting for the Bani Adam, right? Attack them from the front, from the right, from the left, from the bottom. Right? He will come from the top, from all our directions to." So Habib Abu Bakar wrote a book, Takwin Adami. That book basically discusses the Takwin Al-Adami, between these two war, right? Historical war between Iblis and Bani Adam. Right? How his different methodologies, the methodology of Iblis, right? How he tries to ensnare, trap human beings and deviate them from the path of Allah SWT. And so we look at the history of Nabi Adam and between him and Iblis, and then the Qabil and Habil, right? So this is we have to relook into this history, right? The different phases, the different eras, right? What happened to Qabil? What was his mistake? So therein there are lessons for us, right? These are all tahawulat of zaman, right? How he changed, right, from following his father, right, to become an enemy, to become like someone who goes in the opposite path, right? And he was said to be the first person to worship fire, right? So Iblis came to him and told him, right, do you know why your brothers korban, right? They were supposed to present sacrifices, right, in order to see who is more entitled to marry the uh, Qabil's sister, right? Qabil's twin sister. So Qabil claims that his twin sister, right, and him is more suited for each other. They were of the heavens. Supposedly, they were probably born there, or they were, yeah. So Qabil was he presented his sacrifice, and his brother presented his sacrifice, and his was rejected. And Iblis said, your Qurban was rejected because they saw the fire, right? The fire that came to engulf the Qurban of your brother. Right? So because your brother was a worshipper of fire. And so that was a lie which Iblis told Qabil, and Qabil, he bought that lie. And he built the first fire worshipping temple, sort of like. And so he was the first fire worshipper. Right? So this is narrated in Tafsir Tabari. So yeah, this history, how he followed the path of Iblis, and to the extent that his murder of his brother, right, becomes like a legacy, like a sunnah, right? It is said, لأنه كان أول من سن القتل. He is the first person who initiated, right, murder, right? So because of that, لا تقتل نفس ظلما إلا لا تقتل نفس ظلما إلا كان على ابن آدم الأول كفل من دمها. So he has a share of the sin because he's the one who initiated it, right? Say back to the man sanna fil Islam sunnatan hasana falahu ajruha wa ajru man amila biha. Whoever initiates a good act, you get a good recompense, and those who follow after you, right? So that is the story of Qabil, which is part of Alam, Ajal, and Amal. And so, as I mentioned, history, right, is influenced by a person's way of looking at the world, his worldview, right? A person's biases, right? So, therefore, this is a important topic, right, in fiqh tahawulat, to understand history from the perspective of the deen. Right? So it says here, the purpose of this is to correct the understanding of what it means to read and study history by beginning with the sempiternal sawabiq, followed by the understanding of first humans, evolution of their life, the mutaghayyirat in their life, until all the way to the end of the universe, in accordance with the teachings and studies explained in the Signs of the Sign of the Hour. And this can be explained in three categories, right? The period of revelation, period of preemptive reading, period of inductive reading. So this is how we gain this knowledge through the three kinds of reading of three different phases. This is then followed by the actual study of the signs of the hour, known as signs of Ahmad and Abad, making the Thawabit verses and the authentic prophetic traditions and the basis of interpretation. Understanding of the concept of beginning of creation and life, the evolution of human life on earth, fate, destiny, and the purpose of mankind in this life and the hereafter. This approach can also be adopted by benefiting from the natural theories in the appropriate domains, albeit without relying on them in the historical interpretation of the universe and the origin of the existence. Yeah, you can still rely. You can. I'm not saying that. He's not saying that you throw away everything that history that is written in the books by people, by those other people of different ideologies, right? You can, but you have to filter it. You have to carefully tread it, right? And see what is comes from their biases, what comes from their hidden agendas, what comes from their view of mankind as just a Homo sapien, right? Or product of evolution, biological evolution. So you need to look at it, filter it lah, basically. Study, just read it for facts. What is established, right? We have our methodology of tawatur, right? Like particular thing, if it is witnessed by many people, right, it becomes a undeniable fact, right? Regardless whether it is Muslim or non-Muslim lah, right? Everyone witnessed World War. Many people witnessed World War One, for example. It is not, a fact that can be denied. It is like mutawatir in the sense that it's irrationally impossible for everyone to conspire to lie to the future generations about this particular thing, right? Right. So we have our methodology. I think Sheikh Muhammad Said Al-Buti, his book Kubra Al-Yakiniyat, he has a discussion on this. Right? Our methodology towards things like this lah, scientific facts. Okay, Wallahu alam. Any questions regarding this topic for today, lesson 15? Okay, so I assume there are no questions, so I'll end the session for today. So I see that there's not many people today. I think probably yesterday they were tired with the majlis. Wallahu alam bisawab, and thank you for attending. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wassalam.